"I saw you cleaning the evidence of last night," the Apache teased, and the widow blushed scarlet. Birds chirped cheerfully in the trees, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh earth and flowers through the narrow streets. Maria, the widow, was already awake. She had developed an early morning routine that helped her feel grounded and connected to life after the long months of mourning. Each day, she would begin with a quiet walk through her small garden, brushing her fingers over the leaves and flowers she had carefully tended. Gardening had always been her way of finding peace, a moment where the world seemed to slow down just enough for her to breathe fully. After her walk, she returned to her modest home, a small, sunlit house at the edge of the village. The house had been hers for years, filled with memories of her late husband, memories that now felt like a mixture of comfort and sadness. She carefully swept the floor, arranged the simple furnishings, and washed the dishes left from the previous night. Even these ordinary tasks brought her a sense of purpose. Life after loss was not easy, but Maria found small moments of solace in these routines, small victories that reminded her she could still manage, still care, and still live. The village itself was waking up. Children ran along the cobblestone streets, their laughter ringing out and bouncing off the old stone walls. Merchants opened their stalls, displaying colorful fruits, fresh bread, and fragrant herbs. The air was alive with the sounds of daily life, people greeting each other with nods and smiles, dogs barking, the distant clatter of carts along the uneven roads. It was a simple life, one that moved slowly but meaningfully. Maria often found herself watching from her doorway, enjoying these quiet moments of observation, feeling a connection to the world outside that she had almost lost in her grief. As she tended to her morning chores, Maria noticed something unusual. Chief Apache, a well-known visitor to the village, was walking past her home. He was tall and strong, with a presence that seemed to command attention without any effort. People in the village respected him, not only for his experience and knowledge, but also for his calm, approachable nature. Apache had always been a friend to many, someone who could listen without judgment and offer advice when it was needed. Maria had met him a few times at village gatherings, and though they had never been close, she felt a quiet sense of familiarity in his presence. That morning, Apache paused by her fence, leaning casually against the wooden posts. His dark eyes sparkled with amusement as he observed her garden, noting the carefully arranged flowers and the subtle traces of last night's activity. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She had been cleaning up after the village celebration held the previous evening, a lively gathering with music, dancing, and laughter. Though Maria had attended reluctantly, she had participated in her quiet way, enjoying the soft melodies of the music and the gentle warmth of people sharing stories and food. Now the remnants of the celebration, small decorations, scattered petals, and a few stray crumbs were scattered across her yard. Apache's gaze lingered on the scene with a hint of playfulness. He spoke in a calm, teasing tone, remarking on the way she had been cleaning the evidence of last night. Maria froze for a moment, caught off guard by the remark. Her cheeks burned, a sudden warmth spreading across her face. She tried to smile, brushing off the comment with a polite laugh, but her embarrassment was unmistakable. The playful tone in Apache's voice, the knowing look in his eyes, made her realize that he had seen her quiet effort, her careful attention to detail, and perhaps even the small moments of enjoyment she had allowed herself during the celebration. The villagers passing by noticed the exchange. Some smiled knowingly, recognizing the subtle tension between the two. Maria felt her heart race, a mix of shyness and curiosity that she hadn't felt in months. She continued her chores, sweeping the yard and arranging the flowers, but her mind was no longer focused solely on the work. She found herself glancing at Apache, feeling a strange mixture of nervousness and anticipation. There was something about his presence that brought a sense of lightness to her day, a reminder that life could hold moments of connection and warmth even after long periods of solitude. Apache, noticing her slight distraction, continued to speak in a gentle, teasing manner. He recounted small, humorous details from the previous night. The way a few children had tried to mimic the traditional dance, the minor mishap with the village banner, and the laughter that had echoed through the streets long after the music had stopped. Maria listened, initially with a hint of embarrassment but gradually with a growing sense of amusement. The stories reminded her of the joy that had existed, fleeting though it might have been, and she felt a small, reluctant smile form on her lips. As the morning progressed, the interaction between Maria and Apache became more relaxed. The initial blush and embarrassment faded into a shared understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of a moment passed between them that was lighthearted yet meaningful. Maria realized that this simple, playful exchange was a reminder that the world was still full of small joys, and that even in the midst of grief, laughter and connection could find their way back into her life. After a while, Apache tipped his head slightly in farewell, continuing his walk through the village. Maria watched him go, a lingering warmth in her chest. She returned to her chores, but the feeling of connection stayed with her, transforming the ordinary morning into something memorable. Each sweep of the broom, each careful arrangement of flowers, now carried a sense of shared experience, a quiet acknowledgement that life continued to offer moments of unexpected joy and human connection. As the day wore on, Maria moved through her home with renewed attention, noticing the subtle beauty in the mundane. The sunlight streaming through her window highlighted the petals of her flowers, the dust motes dancing in the warm beams. The sounds of the village continued outside, children's laughter, the calls of merchants, the rhythmic footsteps of neighbors passing by. But within her home there was a sense of calm and contentment. She realized that these small moments, often overlooked, were the threads that wove life together. They were simple, quiet, and yet profoundly meaningful. By midday, Maria had completed most of her chores. She paused at her garden gate, taking a deep breath of the fragrant air. The memory of Apache's teasing smile lingered, bringing a soft blush to her cheeks once more. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time, a mix of embarrassment, amusement, and unexpected warmth. She allowed herself to smile fully, acknowledging the subtle thrill of human connection that had entered her quiet morning. Even in the aftermath of loss, Maria understood that life moved forward in small, delicate ways. The laughter of children, the chatter of neighbors, the playful words of a visiting friend, all were reminders that the world continued to spin, offering opportunities for joy, connection, and renewal. In her own way, Maria felt ready to embrace these moments again, allowing herself the small pleasures of morning sunlight, garden blooms, and the gentle teasing of someone who saw the world as she did, full of both simplicity and wonder. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Maria returned to her work with a sense of purpose and lightness. She hummed softly to herself, arranging the last of the flowers and brushing off the final traces of the previous night. Life, she realized, was not only about the weight of loss, but also about the small, fleeting moments that brought color and warmth back into the heart. And in that quiet, sunlit morning, Maria felt a spark of something new, an openness to the unexpected, a readiness to embrace life with both its challenges and its gentle surprises. The morning had slowly shifted into a warm, golden afternoon. Maria continued with her chores, sweeping the small yard and arranging her flowers just so, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Chief Apache. She found herself replaying his teasing words, "I saw you cleaning the evidence of last night," and the mischievous sparkle in his eyes as he said them. The memory made her cheeks warm again, an unintentional blush rising as she realized just how much his presence affected her. She tried to focus on her work, but each movement felt lighter, as if his words had lifted a small weight off her shoulders. Apache, meanwhile, had not walked far. He lingered near the village square, observing life with his calm, steady gaze. Yet he kept sneaking glances toward Maria's house. He had noticed her delicate movements, the way she tended her garden, and the subtle way she seemed to retreat into herself even as she completed her tasks. Something about her quiet strength, mixed with her gentle shyness, intrigued him. He had spent many years among different villages, meeting countless people, but Maria was different. There was a quiet dignity about her, yet also a spark of vulnerability that made her human, real, and approachable. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to walk back, taking the route that would bring him past her garden once again. Maria, unaware of his return, continued arranging flowers along the edge of the yard. She picked up a few petals that had fallen from the night's celebration and brushed them into a small pile. It was a simple act, but it felt like a small gesture of order against the chaos of her emotions. She had spent so much time alone that these small routines were her anchor, giving her a sense of control in a world that often felt unpredictable. Apache's voice broke her thoughts. "You really took your time cleaning up," he said gently, a teasing smile playing on his lips. Maria jumped slightly, her hands freezing mid-motion. She felt heat rise to her face again, her heart skipping a beat. She tried to respond with a polite laugh, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, but the words didn't come easily. I like things tidy," she finally managed, her voice soft but steady. Apache chuckled, a sound that was both warm and friendly, and Maria found herself relaxing slightly. They began talking, slowly at first, sharing small observations about the village and the morning. Apache asked about the flowers, noting the careful way Maria had arranged them, and Maria found herself explaining, almost unconsciously, why she chose each bloom. She described how the bright yellow marigolds reminded her of sunlight, and the soft blue flowers brought a sense of calm. As she spoke, she noticed Apache listening intently, his eyes never leaving hers. There was no judgment in his gaze, only a quiet curiosity and warmth that made her feel seen. Then, with a playful glint in his eye, Apache brought up last night's celebration. "And what about the banner incident?" he asked lightly. "I saw a certain someone make a heroic effort to rescue it before it completely fell." Maria's face flushed again. She had tried to discreetly fix the banner when a gust of wind had knocked it down, hoping no one had noticed. But Apache's teasing voice reminded her that he had indeed noticed, and perhaps even found it amusing. She felt a mixture of embarrassment and delight, the kind that comes from being recognized for something small yet significant. Apache laughed softly. "I must say you handled it with elegance," he said, the hint of teasing in his tone unmistakable. Maria tried to laugh along, though it came out more as a nervous giggle. She felt herself drawn into the conversation, realizing that this exchange was different from any she had had in months. It was playful, light, yet strangely comforting. For a brief moment, she forgot her solitude, her grief, and the endless routines of her daily life. Here was someone who could make her feel alive again, even in small, unexpected ways. As they continued talking, Apache shared small, humorous stories from the night. He recounted how some of the children had tried to imitate the traditional dances, stepping on each other's feet in their excitement. He described how a few of the villagers had gotten caught in playful mischief, and how the music had seemed to carry laughter throughout the village long after it ended. Maria listened, initially embarrassed, but gradually she found herself laughing softly. The sound of her own laughter startled her at first. She had not realized how much she had missed it. It was a gentle, freeing experience, like a small weight lifting from her chest. Apache's teasing never felt cruel or mocking. There was a kindness in it, a way of bringing humor into the situation without diminishing her. Maria realized that this lightheartedness was something she had been missing. She had spent so much time in quiet reflection in mourning that moments of joy had become foreign, almost uncomfortable. But now, she felt herself embracing the laughter, the small jokes, and the shared stories. It was a reminder that life was not meant to be lived only in solitude or sorrow, but also in connection, in moments of playfulness and human warmth. At one point, Apache leaned casually against the fence again, studying Maria with an expression that combined curiosity and gentle amusement. "You know," he said, "I think the garden looks even more beautiful after last night's chaos." Maria blinked, unsure how to respond. She felt a strange mix of pride and shyness, realizing that someone else could see her efforts, her careful attention, and appreciate it. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Apache nodded, satisfied, and for a moment there was a comfortable silence between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the village. The conversation slowly drifted to more personal topics. Apache asked about Maria's family, her late husband, and how she had been managing in the months since his passing. Maria spoke carefully, sharing only what she felt comfortable with, but she was surprised at how easy it was to open up to him. There was no pressure, no probing questions, only a gentle interest, a listening ear that made her feel valued. She spoke of her routines, her garden, and the quiet life she had built for herself. And in turn, Apache shared small stories from his travels, experiences from other villages, and reflections on life. The dialogue was simple but meaningful, a quiet bridge forming between two individuals who had found an unexpected connection. As the afternoon wore on, Maria realized that time had slipped away unnoticed. The sun had climbed higher, casting warm light across the yard, and the village had grown busier with merchants, children, and travelers passing through. Yet in her garden there was a sense of calm, a small world where laughter and conversation had temporarily replaced loneliness and grief. She felt a spark of hope, a gentle reminder that life could offer moments of light even after dark times. Finally, Apache prepared to leave. He tipped his head politely, a soft smile on his face. "I should be going," he said, "but I hope the garden survives the rest of the day's chaos." Maria smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her chest. "I will make sure it does," she replied softly. There was a lingering feeling in the air, a subtle acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them in just a few hours. After he left, Maria lingered in the garden, reflecting on the encounter. Her heart felt lighter, her mind buzzing with the small details of their conversation. She realized that the blush on her cheeks had not been a sign of weakness, but a signal that life was slowly returning to her. The teasing, the laughter, and the shared stories had reminded her that she was not alone, and that human connection could bring warmth and healing in unexpected ways. She continued her chores, but now with a sense of joy and anticipation she hadn't felt in a long time. Each sweep of the broom, each careful arrangement of petals, felt like a small act of celebration. The morning had started with routine, with quiet solitude, but it had transformed into a vivid memory of shared moments, laughter, and subtle intimacy. Maria realized that even small gestures, like a teasing remark from a friend, could create ripples of happiness and connection in one's life. By the time she finally rested for a brief break, Maria felt a quiet sense of gratitude. The day had been ordinary in many ways, yet extraordinary in its emotional impact. Apache's teasing had not only made her laugh but had reminded her of her own capacity for joy, for human connection, and for embracing life once more. She leaned back against her garden gate, closing her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, and the lingering presence of the unexpected, playful bond that had formed that afternoon. It was a small, simple thing, a few words, a shared laugh, a knowing glance, but it had shifted something inside her. Maria understood that moments like these were precious, fleeting, and yet profoundly meaningful. She allowed herself to savor the memory, to blush quietly at the recollection, and to carry a renewed sense of hope into the rest of her day. Life, she realized, was not only about survival after loss, but about finding small, unexpected sparks that reminded her of beauty, connection, and the gentle joy that could still be found in the world. The days following the playful encounter between Maria and Chief Apache passed. With a gentle rhythm, the village carrying on as always. The market buzzed with activity, children ran along the streets laughing, and the smell of fresh bread and roasted herbs drifted through the air. Yet, amidst the familiar sounds and sights, Maria found herself thinking more and more about Apache. His teasing words, the warmth in his voice, and the calm amusement in his eyes lingered in her mind, like a melody that refused to fade. She realized that she looked forward to the possibility of seeing him again, a feeling both exciting and unfamiliar. Maria's daily routines continued, but they were subtly different now. When she watered her flowers in the morning or swept her yard, she felt a lightness in her movements, a quiet joy she hadn't experienced in months. Each small act of care felt connected to the memory of the conversation with Apache, as if his presence had left a small, glowing mark on her day. Even the chores she once considered mundane, the washing of dishes, folding of laundry and sweeping of the floor, now carried a sense of purpose and even delight. She smiled more readily, sometimes catching herself humming a gentle tune while working. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift, but it made a world of difference to how she experienced her days. Meanwhile, Apache had not forgotten the encounter either. In his travels through nearby villages and during his quiet moments of reflection, he found himself recalling Maria's delicate gestures, the subtle blush on her cheeks, and the way she laughed quietly when he teased her. There was a warmth in those memories that made him smile. He had met many people in his life, but few left such a quiet, lingering impression. Maria was different, not only because of her gentle nature and quiet strength, but because of the authenticity in everything she did. Her presence felt real and grounding, and it drew him in, inviting him to connect beyond the usual surface-level interactions he had experienced elsewhere. One afternoon, as the sun hung high in the sky, Apache returned to the village intentionally. This time, he made his way to the edge of Maria's yard with a relaxed, confident stride. Maria was tending to her flowers, kneeling in the soft soil as she carefully positioned each plant. She didn't notice him approaching until he spoke, his voice warm and familiar. "The garden is looking even better today," he said, leaning casually against the fence. Maria froze for a moment, then looked up, her cheeks flushing once again. She tried to hide her smile behind a hand, but it was impossible. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of shyness and amusement. The conversation began with light topics as before, but soon drifted into shared memories of the previous celebration. Apache recounted more humorous moments, pointing out small incidents Maria had thought went unnoticed. There was the time a little boy had tripped while trying to dance, the way the village dog had stolen a loaf of bread, and how a few of the villagers had gotten tangled in a long ribbon during a game. Maria laughed aloud this time, fully and freely, the sound ringing out across the yard. Apache's teasing continued, but it was gentle, never harsh, always leaving room for her to respond in her own way. She felt a sense of connection that went beyond mere conversation. It was an exchange of understanding, of shared amusement, and of subtle intimacy that neither had expected. As the conversation grew, Maria noticed something shifting within herself. Her initial embarrassment and nervousness began to transform into a feeling of comfort and trust. She realized that Apache's presence made her feel seen, valued, and even playful, as though she could set aside the heavy weight of grief and simply be herself. She began to share small details of her life, stories of her late husband, and reflections on the quiet months she had spent alone. Apache listened attentively, nodding, asking gentle questions, and sometimes teasing lightly in a way that encouraged her to open up further. It was a delicate balance, a dance of words and emotions, and Maria found herself savoring every moment. At one point, Apache paused and leaned closer, his tone softening. "You know," he said, "I never realized how much life can hide in the small, quiet moments. You seem to notice things most people miss." Maria looked at him, her eyes widening slightly. I suppose I just pay attention," she replied. She felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet pride in being recognized in such a thoughtful way. Apache smiled, and the connection between them deepened. It was no longer just playful teasing. It had become a bridge between two people, a subtle acknowledgement of shared understanding and mutual respect. As they talked, the afternoon stretched on, the golden sunlight casting long, warm shadows across the yard. Maria's garden seemed to glow in the soft light, the colors of the flowers more vivid than ever. She noticed the way Apache's presence seemed to amplify the beauty around her, making ordinary moments feel extraordinary. She found herself leaning slightly toward him during conversation, catching his gaze more often than she realized. Each smile, each playful remark, carried with it a quiet intimacy, a gentle spark that neither of them could ignore. The conversation eventually turned to lighter, more imaginative topics. Apache asked Maria about her dreams, what she wished for in life, and even the small, silly things that brought her joy. Maria spoke of simple pleasures, the scent of fresh bread, the feel of soil between her fingers, the warmth of sunlight on her face. She found herself describing moments she had long forgotten to cherish, and Apache listened with genuine interest, occasionally offering his own reflections or teasing in a way that made her laugh. The exchange was effortless, a natural flow that built a sense of trust and comfort between them. Maria realized that she had been avoiding moments like this for far too long. Since her husband's passing, she had kept herself isolated, afraid of letting anyone get too close or of experiencing emotions she was not ready to face. But Apache's presence was different. He didn't push, he didn't demand, and he didn't judge. He simply shared stories, offered gentle teasing, and allowed her the space to respond in her own time. It was a revelation for Maria, a reminder that human connection could be both safe and joyful, even after loss. As the afternoon wore on, Maria noticed the subtle changes in herself. Her laughter came more freely, her movements were lighter, and her heart felt a gentle warmth she hadn't experienced in months. She understood that this connection with Apache was more than mere amusement. It was a lifeline back to life, a small but powerful reminder that joy and companionship could still exist. She began to anticipate his visits, to plan her own tasks so she might see him again, and to reflect on the simple moments that made each day meaningful. Apache, too, felt a growing bond with Maria. He had not expected to find someone who could both surprise and calm him in equal measure. Her quiet strength, tempered by vulnerability, created a balance that fascinated him. He found himself lingering in conversation longer than intended, sharing stories and observations he might not have shared with anyone else. Each laugh, each blush, each subtle glance created a deeper understanding between them, a silent acknowledgement that their connection was becoming something special. By the time the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting warm orange and pink hues across the village, Maria and Apache had spent hours in conversation. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, fresh soil, and the faint aroma of food from nearby homes. The village itself seemed to slow, as if recognizing the quiet intimacy of this moment. Maria felt a mixture of contentment and anticipation, a feeling that life could be gentle, playful, and meaningful all at once. She realized that the simple act of sharing time with someone who understood her could bring more healing than she had imagined. Finally, Apache stood to leave, tipping his head politely with a soft smile. "I should go," he said, "but I hope to see your garden and you again soon." Maria smiled back, her heart fluttering slightly. "I will be here," she replied softly, a promise in her tone. There was no need for grand declarations, no rush to define what was happening. The moment itself, full of warmth, laughter, and gentle teasing, was enough. After he left, Maria lingered in her garden, reflecting on the afternoon. She felt a sense of renewal, a quiet understanding that connection, playfulness, and joy could coexist with her grief. Her cheeks still warmed at the memory of his teasing words, and her mind replayed the laughter and shared stories with a fondness that made her heart feel lighter. She understood that this was only the beginning, a first step toward opening herself to life, to human connection, and to moments of unexpected happiness. As the evening approached, Maria returned to her home, carrying with her the gentle warmth of the day. She arranged her flowers, tidied her home, and allowed herself to smile at the memory of Apache's presence. Life, she realized, was full of these subtle, fleeting moments, moments that could surprise, delight, and heal in equal measure. And in the quiet of her home, Maria understood that even after loss, there was still room for laughter, connection, and the small sparks of life that made each day meaningful. The days that followed felt brighter and lighter for Maria. The memory of Apache's visit lingered in her mind like a gentle melody, making even ordinary chores feel more pleasant. She noticed herself smiling at small things, a butterfly landing on a flower, the sun warming her back, or the laughter of children playing in the street. Life no longer felt heavy and monotonous. There was a sense of anticipation in her heart, a subtle excitement she hadn't felt in months. For the first time in a long while, she looked forward to the simple act of seeing Apache again, even if only for a few words or a friendly smile. Yet, alongside this newfound joy, Maria also felt a flicker of hesitation. She had spent so many months alone, guarding her heart carefully, afraid of being vulnerable. The playful teasing and warmth Apache offered brought a sense of comfort, but it also reminded her of the risks of opening herself up again. Could she allow herself to feel happiness without fear? Could she accept the subtle thrill of companionship without guilt or worry? These questions circled in her mind as she went about her day, planting new flowers in her garden and tidying her home, each small task acting as a meditation on her own feelings. Apache, too, had been thinking about Maria. His visits to the village had become less random and more intentional. He found himself lingering near her home, sometimes waiting for a brief glimpse of her in the garden, sometimes finding an excuse to speak with her at the market. Each conversation, each shared laugh, and each teasing remark created a stronger bond. Apache appreciated her gentle nature and quiet strength, but he also sensed her vulnerability. He approached her not to take advantage of it, but to offer companionship, warmth, and understanding, qualities he believed could ease the weight she carried. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip into a softer, amber light, Apache returned to Maria's garden. The flowers were in full bloom, vibrant and fragrant, reflecting the care and love she poured into them. Maria was kneeling in the soil, planting a row of small, delicate flowers along the edge of the garden. When she noticed Apache leaning on the fence, she felt a familiar warmth rise to her cheeks. She tried to hide it with a slight cough, but he caught her glance and smiled, the teasing sparkle in his eyes immediately softening her nervousness. "You've been busy," he remarked, stepping closer. "The garden looks more alive than ever." Maria smiled softly, her fingers stilling in the soil. I like to see things grow," she said quietly. "It makes me feel connected to life again." Apache nodded thoughtfully. He understood this sentiment well, the comfort of nurturing, of creating beauty in small ways, especially after experiencing loss. It was in these tiny acts that people found hope, he thought, and Maria seemed to embrace it fully. Their conversation flowed naturally, like a stream weaving between stones. Apache shared stories from his travels, tales of other villages, and anecdotes of people he had met. Maria listened, laughing at some of the humorous situations, intrigued by the unusual customs he described, and occasionally reflecting on the similarities with her own life. As they spoke, a subtle shift began to take place within Maria. She felt an easing of the tension she had carried for so long, a relaxation of the cautious walls she had built around her heart. The playful teasing, the attentive listening, and the gentle smiles all worked together to create a sense of safety and warmth she hadn't realized she missed so deeply. Then, Apache paused, his tone softening. "Maria," he said, choosing his words carefully, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I think you've been hiding your light for far too long. You have a way of seeing beauty, of caring deeply, that deserves to be shared with the world." Maria's heart skipped a beat. She had spent so many months convincing herself that solitude was the safest option, that happiness was dangerous or fleeting. Yet here was someone acknowledging her worth, her strength, and her ability to bring joy and beauty into the lives of others. The words touched her in a way that made her eyes mist slightly, though she quickly blinked away the tears. Apache noticed her momentary pause and smiled gently. "I don't mean to make you uncomfortable," he said softly. "I only wish to remind you that it's okay to feel, to laugh, and to embrace life again." Maria nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed the soil around the flowers. She realized that his words were not just a compliment. They were a reminder that her grief, though real and deep, did not have to define every aspect of her existence. There was space for joy, connection, and even the unexpected warmth of friendship or companionship. Encouraged by his presence, Maria shared a small story from her past, one she had kept tucked away in her heart. She spoke of her late husband, the quiet moments they had shared in their garden, and the simple joys that had once filled her days. Apache listened intently, offering gentle nods and soft words of understanding. He didn't try to rush her or change the narrative. He simply held space for her story, showing that someone could witness her past without judgment or fear. Maria felt a lightness in sharing, as if a small burden had been lifted from her shoulders. As the sun began to lower further, casting long shadows across the garden, Apache offered a small, teasing smile. "I think these flowers are lucky," he said lightly. "They have a gardener who cares deeply, and they have the company of someone who appreciates them." Maria's cheeks warmed at the playful remark, and she laughed softly, a sound full of genuine delight. The moment felt delicate and meaningful, a bridge between the past she had carried and the life she was slowly allowing herself to embrace again. In the days that followed, their meetings became more frequent, though always gentle and unassuming. Apache did not push, and Maria did not feel pressured. They found joy in small conversations, shared moments of quiet laughter, and even in comfortable silences that spoke volumes. Maria noticed that her own confidence was returning gradually. She smiled more freely, spoke with a softer tone of self-assurance, and allowed herself to appreciate the beauty in her surroundings without guilt or hesitation. Apache, in turn, admired her growth and her willingness to re-engage with the world around her. One particular afternoon, a small incident in the village brought them even closer. A sudden gust of wind threatened to scatter the petals Maria had so carefully arranged, and before she could react, Apache stepped forward to help. Together they rescued the flowers, laughing as the petals tickled their hands. It was a small, seemingly trivial event, yet it carried a deeper meaning, a shared experience of cooperation, care, and joy. Maria realized that life did not have to be monumental to be meaningful. Even small acts could create profound connections. As the light of day shifted into a warm, golden evening, Maria reflected on how much she had changed in just a short time. Her heart felt lighter, her mind more open, and her spirit subtly uplifted. The teasing, the laughter, the shared stories, and the gentle attention had all contributed to a transformation she hadn't fully realized was possible. Life was no longer just a series of tasks and routines. It was a tapestry of experiences, some small, some profound, all of them meaningful in their own way. Apache's presence had shown her that it was possible to embrace life again without erasing the memory of her past. Her grief, while still a part of her, did not have to prevent her from experiencing joy, connection, or the simple pleasures that once seemed out of reach. She had discovered that allowing herself to be playful, to laugh, and even to blush at a teasing remark was not weakness. It was a sign of life returning to her heart. By evening, when Apache finally left the garden, Maria lingered among her flowers. She breathed in the soft fragrance, feeling the warmth of the fading sun on her face, and let herself smile. For the first time in months, she felt a quiet hope, an understanding that life could be tender, playful, and unexpectedly beautiful, even after loss. She realized that Apache's gentle presence, his teasing words, and his attentiveness had done more than brighten her days. They had opened a small door in her heart, inviting her to step through and experience life fully once again. As the stars began to appear in the evening sky, Maria returned to her home with a calm and hopeful heart. She understood that the journey was far from over. There would still be moments of sadness, loneliness, and reflection. But she also knew that she had discovered something invaluable: the power of connection, laughter, and trust. She could embrace the small joys of life once more, and perhaps even allow herself to explore the possibility of love, friendship, and companionship in ways she had not imagined for a long time. In the quiet of her home that night, Maria arranged her flowers one last time before heading inside. She looked out the window at the garden, the gentle sway of petals in the evening breeze, and thought of Apache's warm smile and teasing words. A soft blush returned to her cheeks, a reminder of the subtle intimacy and joy that had entered her life. Life, she realized, was not about rushing forward or erasing the past. It was about cherishing moments, embracing connection, and allowing oneself to feel fully and freely the richness of being alive. And for Maria, that evening marked a turning point. She understood that she could live with her memories, carry her grief, and still open herself to new experiences, laughter, and the possibility of love. The journey was gradual, delicate, and deeply personal, but for the first time in a long while, she felt truly ready to take the next steps, guided by warmth, companionship, and the gentle reminder that life, in all its complexity, could still be wonderfully and unexpectedly beautiful. The next morning, Maria awoke to a gentle sunlight streaming through her window, casting golden patterns across the floor. She stretched slowly, savoring the quiet of her home and the soft sounds of the village outside. The air was fresh and cool, carrying the faint aroma of flowers and morning dew. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of anticipation that wasn't shadowed by sadness. The memories of her conversations with Apache lingered in her mind like warm threads, weaving a sense of hope into her day. She smiled softly to herself, a blush rising to her cheeks as she remembered his playful teasing and gentle attentiveness. Maria's morning routine felt more joyful than usual. She tended her flowers with care, humming a light tune she hadn't remembered in a long time. The garden had become more than just a place of work. It was a sanctuary, a space where she could reflect on life, nurture growth, and feel a subtle but undeniable connection to the world around her. Each flower she planted, each petal she adjusted, carried a sense of purpose and warmth. The memory of Apache's kind words about her garden returned to her, making her chest feel lighter, and she allowed herself to linger over the small details of her plants, admiring their colors and the gentle sway of leaves in the breeze. By mid-morning, Apache had arrived at her garden. He greeted her with a warm smile and a playful sparkle in his eyes, his presence immediately lifting her spirits. "Good morning, gardener," he said, leaning casually against the fence. Maria blushed at the familiar greeting, but she responded with a soft smile, feeling a growing comfort in his company. "Good morning," she replied, her voice steady but carrying a hint of amusement. It had become a small ritual, these shared mornings where they could laugh, tease, and exchange stories. Each meeting strengthened the bond forming between them, slowly but surely. Today, however, their conversation took a deeper turn. Apache asked about her hopes for the future, gently probing into what Maria might want beyond the daily routines and garden chores. Maria paused, thinking carefully. She realized that she had spent so long focused on maintaining a life of quiet order, avoiding risks and emotions, that she hadn't considered what she truly wanted. Slowly she shared her thoughts, speaking softly about small dreams, perhaps hosting a modest village gathering, tending more flowers, or simply spending more time enjoying life rather than just surviving it. Apache listened intently, nodding, occasionally offering gentle encouragement but never pushing. The conversation flowed naturally, as if the words themselves were bridging the gap between caution and hope. Their laughter returned as well, light and easy, punctuating their conversation with moments of pure joy. Apache recounted a story from another village, involving a mischievous dog and a pile of freshly baked bread, and Maria laughed so freely that she almost forgot to breathe for a moment. She realized how much she had missed laughter that wasn't tinged with sadness or guilt. The sound of her own laughter, mingling with Apache's, felt like a cleansing, washing away some of the lingering heaviness that had weighed on her for so long. She felt alive in a way she hadn't experienced in months, a warmth spreading quietly but firmly through her chest. As the day progressed, Maria noticed how much she had changed. The gentle teasing that once made her blush was now a welcome comfort, a playful intimacy she cherished rather than feared. She found herself speaking with more confidence, sharing thoughts she might have kept to herself before, and allowing small moments of vulnerability to surface without fear. Apache's presence was a constant reassurance, a reminder that connection, kindness, and joy were possible, even in a life that had seen loss. His quiet attentiveness and playful manner had become an anchor, a source of strength she hadn't realized she needed. At one point, Apache helped her carry a few pots of newly planted flowers to a different section of the garden. As they worked together, their hands occasionally brushed, sending a small, delightful spark of awareness between them. Maria felt her heart beat a little faster, and a warm blush spread across her cheeks. Apache noticed, offering a teasing but gentle smile, and she couldn't help but laugh softly. These moments, small and ordinary, had grown into something profound, a shared intimacy built on trust, understanding, and subtle playfulness. Later, they sat on a small bench beneath a tree, watching the village life continue around them. Children ran past, villagers waved and greeted them, and the sun cast long shadows that danced across the ground. Apache leaned slightly toward Maria, his voice quiet and sincere. "You've grown so much these past weeks," he said gently. "You're allowing yourself to feel, to enjoy, and to embrace life again. That's a rare and beautiful thing." Maria felt a lump in her throat. She had worked hard to protect herself, to stay cautious, but here was someone acknowledging her strength and growth. She nodded, her eyes misty but bright. I feel it too," she admitted softly. The afternoon slowly melted into evening. Maria realized that she no longer feared the quiet moments or the stillness of her home. She had learned that life could be both reflective and joyful, that grief and happiness could coexist, and that human connection, gentle, respectful, and playful, could transform ordinary days into something extraordinary. Apache's teasing words, his laughter, and his attentive presence had become part of her daily life, creating an environment where she felt safe to grow emotionally, spiritually, and even playfully. As twilight approached, casting a soft purple glow across the village, Apache stood to leave. He tipped his head politely, a warm smile on his face. "I'll come again tomorrow," he said, "if the garden and you permit me." Maria laughed softly, feeling a flutter of happiness in her chest. "You're always welcome," she replied, her voice carrying a mixture of amusement and sincerity. The brief exchange felt like a promise, an unspoken agreement that their connection would continue to grow, slowly and naturally, without rush or pressure. That evening, Maria reflected on the journey she had traveled over the past weeks. She thought of her solitude, her grief, and the quiet, cautious life she had led. She remembered the first time Apache had teased her about cleaning the evidence of last night, and she smiled at how far she had come since that moment. Life had shifted in subtle but profound ways. Her laughter returned, her confidence grew, and her heart was slowly opening to connection and joy once again. She understood that happiness did not erase her memories or grief. It simply coexisted with them, creating a richer, fuller experience of life. Over the next few days, Maria and Apache continued to meet regularly. Their conversations remained playful, thoughtful, and comforting. They shared small victories in the garden, humorous stories from the village, and reflections on life. Maria noticed that she was more willing to accept joy, to embrace her emotions, and to enjoy the company of another without fear. The playful blushes, soft laughter, and teasing remarks had become a natural and cherished part of her daily existence. One afternoon, as they planted new flowers together, Apache paused and looked at Maria thoughtfully. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes the smallest gestures make the biggest difference. Your laughter, your kindness, your willingness to embrace life again, it's inspiring." Maria felt warmth flood her chest. She realized that Apache's presence had not only brought comfort but also encouragement. He had shown her that life was not only about enduring challenges, but about cherishing moments, celebrating growth, and allowing oneself to experience connection and happiness fully. The weeks continued, each day weaving new memories and moments of quiet joy. Maria found herself feeling more alive, more connected to the world around her, and more confident in her ability to engage with life. The garden flourished, becoming a symbol of her own growth and resilience. Apache's presence remained a source of gentle encouragement, playful teasing, and shared laughter, helping Maria realize that companionship, friendship, and subtle intimacy could coexist with independence and personal reflection. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in soft shades of pink and orange, Maria stood in her garden, gazing at the flowers and the soft glow of twilight. She thought of Apache, of their shared moments, and of the journey that had brought her here. A blush crept across her cheeks at the memory of his teasing, and she laughed softly, a sound full of warmth and contentment. Life, she realized, was no longer just about survival or routine. It was about embracing connection, joy, and the subtle beauty of each passing day. Maria understood that her journey was ongoing, that there would be moments of sorrow, reflection, and solitude. Yet she also knew that she had rediscovered something invaluable, the ability to feel, to connect, and to experience life fully. Apache's friendship, gentle teasing, and attentiveness had helped her see that life could be playful, meaningful, and unexpectedly beautiful. She allowed herself to feel hope, to anticipate future mornings filled with shared laughter and conversation, and to embrace the small joys that now enriched her days. As night settled over the village, Maria returned to her home with a calm and grateful heart. She arranged her flowers one last time before heading inside, glancing at the garden bathed in moonlight. The gentle sway of petals, the quiet rustle of leaves, and the memory of Apache's smile filled her with a sense of contentment. Life, she realized, was not about rushing forward or erasing the past. It was about cherishing moments, nurturing connection, and allowing oneself to feel fully and freely. And for Maria, the future was no longer something to fear, but something to embrace, with laughter, warmth, and the quiet promise of new beginnings.